It was a humid Thursday evening, August 24th, 2023. When I first arrived in Bangkok, the air clung to my skin like a damp blanket, heavy with the scent of exhaust fumes, street food, and rain-soaked pavement. I was 50 years old, a retired engineer from Houston, Texas, and I had come here chasing the foolish dream that a man could outrun his past if he boarded the right plane. For 30 years, I had lived in the United States, building highways, bridges, and watching my own marriage crumble in the cracks of that concrete. My ex-wife had left me. My grown children barely called. And in my loneliness, Thailand had sounded like salvation. A friend once told me, "In Thailand, you can start again. Life is slower, cheaper, kinder." I clung to that promise the way a drowning man clings to driftwood. By September, I had rented a small teakwood house along a narrow river just outside Bangkok. The place smelled of age, of incense burned by the last tenant, and of the thick greenery that pressed in from the jungle. Every night, I sat on the porch, listening to the frogs, the distant chanting from a nearby temple, and telling myself this was home now. It was during one of those evenings, when the sky was bruised purple with twilight, that I first met her. Her name was Nari. She was 32 years old, with long black hair that fell like silk down her back, and eyes that carried both laughter and sorrow. She worked at a small market stall that sold herbs and jasmine garlands. The first time I spoke to her, I stumbled over my broken tie, and she answered with careful English. She laughed softly at my clumsy words, not cruelly, but as if my effort alone had earned her respect. Weeks turned into months. I found excuses to visit her stall, to buy things I did not need: ginger, garlic, flowers I did not know how to arrange. She began to ask me questions. Do you miss your country? Do you eat spicy food? Why do you sit alone every night? By November, I was no longer alone. We married in a small ceremony in her village, beneath a canopy of banana leaves, with saffron-robed monks chanting blessings. I remember sitting cross-legged on the wooden floor, hands pressed together in the way gesture, as holy water was sprinkled on us. I did not understand every word, but I understood the meaning. She was mine, and I was hers. The house by the river no longer felt haunted by silence. Her laughter echoed in the rooms. Her soft hands swept the floor. Her voice hummed Thai lullabies I could not translate but understood in my bones. For the first time in years, I felt I had outrun loneliness. But in the village, whispers followed me. Old women looked at me with pity. Men shook their heads when they thought I could not see, could not understand their Thai. But sometimes I caught fragments. Farang husband, too old. Spirit wife, Mae Nak. I ignored it. Love makes fools of all men, and I was no exception. One night in December, as fireflies blinked over the river and the cicadas screamed in the trees, Nari sat beside me on the porch. Her hand found mine, her dark eyes searching me with a strange intensity. If anything happens to me, she said softly in English, you will not leave me. You promise. I laughed then, not out of cruelty, but out of disbelief. Of course not. I will never leave you. She pressed her forehead to mine, whispering, forever. I did not know then that I had just made a vow no man should ever make. It was Tuesday night, January 16th, 2024. Around 10:30 in the evening, The air was heavy with rain. The tin roof of our house trembled with every drop. The river swelled just beyond the steps, and the night carried that smell of wet earth and incense that only Thailand seems to know. Nari was 7 months pregnant. She had grown quieter in those weeks, her laughter fading into long silences. I would find her staring into the river, whispering words in Thai that I could not understand. When I asked her, she would only smile faintly and say, "Talking to mother." Her mother had been gone for years. That night, the storm grew violent. Lightning cut the sky open in jagged scars. The power flickered, and we lit candles in the corners of the room. I remember sitting on the floor, eating rice from a wooden bowl, while Nuri folded baby clothes she had stitched herself. I told her she should rest. She only shook her head. At 11:15, she gasped. I turned to see her clutching her stomach, her eyes wide with pain. The folded clothes fell to the floor. "Nari." I rushed to her side, but she pushed me back with trembling hands. "It is too early," she whispered. Sweat already poured down her face. Her lips were pale. I tried calling for help, fumbling with my phone, but the storm had cut the signal. Outside, the road was mud, the village asleep in darkness. The hospital was 20 kilometers away, and I had no car. By 11:40, she was screaming. The sound filled the house, raw and primal, louder than the thunder. She collapsed on the floorboards, her body convulsing. I held her hand, helpless, tears blinding me. I begged her to stay with me, to fight, but her grip weakened. At midnight, she looked at me with eyes that were no longer hers. "Promise me," she whispered, voice barely audible over the rain. "You will not leave me." And then, with one final cry, both she and the unborn child were gone. I do not know how long I sat there, holding her lifeless body as the storm raged on. The candles burned low, casting long shadows that swayed like mourners around me. The river outside roared as if the world itself was grieving. At 3:30 in the morning, villagers came. They had heard my cries, seen the lights. Women covered their mouths, men lowered their heads. They helped me lift her body, wrapping it in white cloth. One elderly woman whispered a single word as she touched my shoulder: "Mae Nak." By sunrise, her body lay in a simple wooden coffin, surrounded by sticks of incense and marigold flowers. Monks in saffron robes chanted at the temple, their voices deep and unyielding, like the earth itself calling her soul to move on. I sat on the cold temple floor, hands pressed together in a way gesture. Though my mind was numb, I remember staring at her face one last time. Her lips had been painted red, her hair brushed neatly over her shoulders, but there was something unnatural about the stillness of her features, something that told me she was not entirely gone. On the 5th day, the cremation took place. The air was thick with smoke, ash drifting like gray snow across the river. I watched the flames consume the coffin, my chest hollow, my body trembling. In that moment, I thought it was the end. I thought I had lost her forever, but I was wrong. It was only the beginning. It was Friday night, February 9th, 2024. A little after 1:15 in the morning, the storm had passed hours earlier, leaving the river swollen and the air smelling of damp wood and spent incense. I had fallen asleep on the floor by the low table because I could not bear to lie in the bed alone. A single candle guttered beside the framed wedding photo. that I kept moving from room to room like a charm against emptiness. 3 soft knocks woke me. Not loud, not urgent. 3 gentle taps, like a familiar hand testing a memory. I sat up so fast the room spun. The gecko that lived in the rafters stopped its call. The far edge of the house creaked as if someone had stepped onto the porch. I told myself it was the wind or a stray cat nosing the rice pot left to cool. But I was already standing, already walking, already holding my breath the way a child does before opening a door in a nightmare. "Who is there?" I asked, though I already knew the shape of the hope that was strangling me. Silence. Then, in the space between my name and the next heartbeat, her voice. "Honey, open the door. It is raining." I did not remember crossing the room, only the sound of the latch giving way, and the smell that came in with the night-wet jasmine, river mud, and the faintest trace of temple smoke. She stood on the threshold with rain on her hair like pearls. Nari. Her long black hair clung to her shoulders. Her white dress darkened at the hem. Her eyes were exactly as I had last seen them when they still belonged to the living bright. Amused and tired in the way joy can be tired after carrying too much, she smiled. It reached her eyes. In that instant, the world went quiet, as if even the river had turned to listen. "It is late," she said softly. "Let me in." My hands trembled. I had watched a coffin close. I had watched flames take that coffin. I had walked home alone from the temple, with a sting of ash in my throat that no water could wash away. None of that mattered now. I stepped aside. The candle flame leaned toward her and then steadied, as if relieved. I fetched a towel without thinking. I wrapped it around her shoulders, rubbing her arms the way I used to after evening rains. Her skin was cool, not cold. Not yet. Rainwater dripped onto the floorboards and made little moons around her bare feet. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but when she looked at me with that patient familiarity, the questions died. "You are hungry," I said, because hunger was ordinary, and ordinary was the lifeline I needed. She shook her head and smiled. "You eat." I lifted the lid of the rice pot. Steam had long since vanished. The grains were clumped and dry, but I spooned some into a bowl anyway. I added a little fish sauce and chili from the small dishes she had taught me to prepare. I sat on the floor. She knelt beside me, knees together, hands folded loosely in her lap, the towel sliding from one shoulder. She watched me the way a mother watches a child take medicine fond, expectant, apart from the act itself. "Eat," she whispered again. And so I did, mouthful after mouthful, my hands shaking, my eyes pulling toward her between every bite, as if I would look away and she would vanish. She did not. She only watched and smiled and smoothed the wrinkle from the towel as if smoothing time. When the bowl was empty, I poured water. She accepted the cup, but did not drink. She lifted it to her lips and held it there, as if listening to the coolness, then set it down. "You should sleep," I said. "You need rest." She stood, and for a moment, I felt that old, small awkwardness of a foreigner in a culture that is not his own. I did not know if there were words I should say now. A greeting, a prayer, an apology for the dead trespassing back into the house of the living. But she reached out and took my hand the way she had on the porch months ago, when she made me promise the kind of promise a man should never make. Her hand was cool and a little damp. My fingers closed around it, and that was when something inside me broke. Not from fear, but from the relief that is more dangerous than fear. I began to cry, like a man cries when he has been brave too long. "Hush," she said. "I am here." We lay down on the bed we had shared. The mosquito net hung above us like a white sail. The candle burned near the wedding photo, throwing our shadows long across the wall. She turned on her side to face me. I could smell the jasmine garland that hung from the window latch, and beneath it, the mineral scent of river water. Her breath did not touch my face. I told myself it was because the air was heavy. I told myself I was too tired to notice. I told myself what men tell themselves when the truth would tear them in half. "Do you remember the lullaby?" she asked. "I do not know the words. You know the tune." She hummed. It was the old melody I had heard a dozen times while she mended clothes or swept the porch, simple, falling and rising like steps down to the water. I closed my eyes and pretended that songs could be bridges, that grief could be walked across if a voice was gentle enough. When I woke, it was near dawn. The candle had drowned in its own wax. The river wore its gray morning skin. For a second, I believed that I had dreamed. That loneliness had given me this mercy and then taken it back. But I turned, and she was there, hair spread on the pillow like spilled ink, eyes open, watching me with a look I could not read. "You did not sleep?" I asked. "I watched," she said, and the word felt both tender and strange. "You breathe like the river." I laughed, because the alternative was to count her breaths. I reached to smooth a strand of hair from her cheek and felt the coolness again, deeper now, as if the night had seeped into her and stayed. My fingers hesitated. She caught my hand and pressed it to her lips. I kissed her. The taste was rainwater and something faintly bitter, as if smoke had passed through her and left a memory behind. "Stay with me today," I said. "We can go to the market. We can buy the little bananas you like. We can..." The sentence ran out of places to go. "Today, we stay home," she said. "Only us." We stayed. I made tea, and she cradled the cup for its warmth, but did not drink. I cut fruit and ate both plates. She sat at the threshold with the towel over her shoulders and watched the river for a long time. When a boat passed, she did not lift her hand. She hummed the lullaby and traced an absent circle on the damp wood with one finger, round and round, as if drawing the moon. By late morning, a neighbor's dog wandered onto the path and barked at nothing I could see. The hair along its spine stood up. It lowered its head and growled at the doorway, then slunk away. I told myself it was afraid of the candle smoke, or of me, the foreigner it never liked. I did not look at Nari to see if she had noticed, because if she had not noticed, it would mean something. And if she had noticed, it would mean something else. At noon, brought out the small white cloth I had kept from the funeral. There is a piece of cloth in every life you should not touch after it has done its work. But I had kept this one folded in a drawer, like proof that I had not imagined the last month. I do not know why I brought it then, except that grief makes museums out of us, and I wanted to show her the exhibit of my sorrow. She looked at it with a softness that made my throat close. "You kept it," she said. "I keep everything," I answered, and realized only after that the sentence had two meanings. She reached for the cloth and then stopped. Her fingers hovered a little above it, like a moth that refuses a candle. "Put it away," she said gently. "We do not need it now." Afternoon slid over the river. Light moved up the wall, like water climbing a bank. The house breathed, wood easing under heat. She did not eat. She did not drink. I offered rice again at dusk, and again she smiled and told me to eat. I did, because I had discovered that love sometimes looks like obedience to the impossible. When the first stars appeared, I lit incense, not because I knew the prayers, but because the act felt like an apology to whatever law of the world I had broken by opening that door. The smoke rose in a thin column and bent toward her and then away, as if unsure. She came to stand beside me. The towel had finally dried. She slipped her hand into mine. "You promised?" she said, in a voice so quiet the incense stick hissed. I did. The word felt like an oath spoken at a border crossing. "Forever," she whispered. We stood there until the incense burned down to ash. When I looked, there were little gray flakes on the floor near her feet, as if snow had fallen where she stood. Knelt to sweep them into my palm and felt a tremor move through me that had nothing to do with fear. I carried the ash to the window and let the river wind lift it away. Night came again. We lay down again. I watched her profile against the dark and told myself that the body forgets its own rhythms when death is near, and that perhaps the opposite is also true. Perhaps the body forgets its old rhythms when it returns. I did not speak this thought aloud. I am an engineer, not a priest, and I have learned that some bridges cannot be calculated, only crossed. Sometime after midnight, the gecko resumed its call. Far off, a monk's bell sounded from the temple where I had sat and pressed my hands together and tried to imagine a life without her. The sound traveled across water and wood and the fragile membrane of our room and entered like a question. She opened her eyes and smiled at me in the dark. "Do not be afraid," she said. "You will not leave me." "I will not," I answered, and felt the words slide into the groove they had carved in me months before, locking into place. With a soft click I could almost hear. Outside, the river turned and turned, and the house turned with it. Inside, I lay awake and counted the space between the rise and fall of the mosquito net, pretending it was breath. When dawn came the second time, the jasmine garland on the window had browned at the edges, as if a week had passed in a single night. I told myself it was the humidity. I told myself 100 small, merciful lies and polished each one until it shone. I did not know then that every kindness a lie gives you must be repaid with interest. I only knew that she had come home, and that love, when it returns from where it has no right to return, is the most dangerous thing in the world. It was Wednesday, February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day. I woke to the sound of birds in the mango tree outside the house. The river shimmered with a thin veil of mist, and for a moment I forgot everything. I turned, expecting an empty bed, but she was there. Nari lay beside me, hair spread across the pillow like black silk, eyes open. She smiled as soon as my gaze met hers. No breath fogged between us, but I told myself the air was too warm for that. I reached for her hand. It was cool, like water from the clay pot, but her fingers curled into mine, and I let the lie hold me. We began to live again, or at least, I told myself we did. I cooked breakfast, rice porridge with ginger, a fried egg, slices of papaya. I placed a bowl in front of her. She folded her hands in her lap, watching. "You eat," she said gently. "You should eat too." Her lips curved. "I am not hungry. I want to see you eat." I forced a smile and lifted the spoon. She watched each mouthful as if my chewing proved something that I was alive enough for both of us. I told myself grief makes people strange. And perhaps this was only my imagination. But day after day, it remained the same. She never ate. She never drank. By the third day, I stopped setting out 2 bowls. I only cooked for myself. She did not complain. She only sat near me, humming that lullaby, her eyes fixed on me with the tenderness of a lover and the hunger of something else. The neighbors began to notice. That Friday, an old woman named Molly stopped by with a basket of sticky rice and grilled fish. She was kind, one of the few who ever spoke to me in slow Thai and broken English. I thanked her, bowing awkwardly, and invited her inside. But the moment Molly stepped across the threshold, Nari was gone. 1 second she was beside me. The next, the space was empty, the air colder. Molly looked around, her eyes narrowing. "You alone?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "My wife. She is sleeping." The old woman's lips pressed thin. She set the basket down and left without another word. When I closed the door, Nari appeared again, sitting where she had been, smiling as if nothing had happened. "You should not let them in," she said softly. "This house is only for us." Her words pricked something deep inside me, but I kissed her forehead and said nothing. Nights were worse. I would wake around 3 in the morning and find her watching me, always watching. Her eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight, not with fire, but with reflection, like the eyes of a cat. "Do you sleep at all?" I asked once. "I do not need to," she answered. "I wait for you." Her voice was sweet, but the weight of it pressed against my chest like stone. One night, I dreamed she was still pregnant. In the dream, I heard the thin, desperate cry of a baby. But when I woke, the sound had not stopped. I sat up, heart pounding, and the cry continued, echoing from the far corner of the room. I turned toward the mosquito net, and the sound cut off like a string snapped. Nari smiled at me from the shadows. "You were dreaming," she said. Nothing more, but the corner of the room smelled of blood and smoke, and I could not bring myself to check. The villagers stopped coming. Even the dogs avoided the path to my house. When I walked to the market, people lowered their eyes. I heard whispers, "Faring husband," "Spirit wife," "Dangerous." One evening, the fruit vendor, a man with tired eyes, pulled me aside. His English was clumsy but urgent. "Mister," he said, gripping my wrist, "you wife, she dead. You know, you live with ghost. Very dangerous. You leave now." I pulled my hand free, anger flaring like fire in dry grass. "Do not say that. She is here. She is alive." He shook his head, pity in his eyes. "Alive for you, but not alive." I stormed away, but his words followed me home, clinging to the air like incense smoke that would not fade. That night, as I sat down to eat, I looked at Nari more carefully. Her dress was always the same white one she had worn when she came back. I had never seen her change. I had never washed it, and yet it never grew dirty. Her hair always lay smooth, no matter how she lay on the pillow. And her skin, it was pale now, paler than it had ever been in life. When I kissed her, her lips were cool, like the stones at the bottom of the river. Still, when she looked at me and said, "You will never leave me, right?" I found myself nodding, because by then, I was no longer sure if I was keeping her or if she was keeping me. It was Monday evening, February 19th, 2024. Around 6:45, the sun was dropping behind the line of palm trees, staining the river with fire. I walked back from the market carrying a basket of rice, chilies, and fish wrapped in banana leaves. My shirt clung to me with sweat, and every step felt heavier than the last. That was when the old spice vendor, a woman with a face like carved teakwood, stepped into my path. She had watched me for weeks with eyes that were too sharp to ignore. This time, she spoke in halting English, her voice low and urgent. "Mister, your wife, she is gone. You live with Shadow." I forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "No, she is home. She waits for me." The woman shook her head slowly. Her hands trembled as she pressed a string of marigold flowers into my basket. "Use this," she whispered. "Do not let her touch you. If you stay, she take your soul." I wanted to throw the garland back at her, but something in her eyes, pity mixed with terror, made my throat tighten. I turned away, clutching the basket too hard, and walked quickly down the muddy path. When I reached the house, the candle was already burning in the window, and she was waiting. That night, I noticed it for the first time, the absence of breath. We lay side by side, the mosquito net hanging around us like a shroud. I listened to the river, to the insects, to the hammer of my own heart, but not to hers. I leaned closer, waiting for the soft rise and fall of her chest, for the whisper of air against my cheek. Nothing. Her eyes opened suddenly. Meeting mine, she smiled. "You are watching me sleep again," she teased. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, you look peaceful." Her hand reached for mine. It was icy, not cool like water anymore, but the chill of stone left too long in shadow. She squeezed gently, and I forced myself not to flinch. The following day, I tried to test her. I cooked fish on the clay stove outside, letting the smoke rise sharp and pungent. I carried the dish inside, set it between us, and picked up a piece with my fingers. "Here," I said, "you should eat. For the baby. For yourself." She tilted her head. Her long hair slid across her shoulder. "I told you," she said softly. "I do not need food." "Please," I pressed. "Just one bite. For me." She leaned forward, her lips brushing the fish as if she would take it. But then her smile widened, and she pushed the plate back toward me. "You eat. I want to watch." The room tilted. My stomach knotted. I ate because refusing her felt impossible. Her eyes never left me. That night, I dreamed again of the child we had lost. The cry came sharper this time, not from the corner of the room, but from underneath the floorboards. A thin, desperate wail rising and falling, rattling the wood beneath my body. I woke in terror, sweat soaking my shirt, but the sound continued. I sat up, staring at the floor. The boards shook lightly, as if something small and restless moved below. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Nari sat upright beside me. Her face was pale in the candlelight, her eyes too dark. She placed a finger to her lips. "Hush, it will disturb the baby." I froze. My mouth went dry. The baby. She nodded once, then lay down again, closing her eyes as if nothing had been said. The crying stopped. The silence that followed was worse. By the end of that week, my resolve began to crumble. I could no longer deny what I touched, what I smelled, what I heard. Her body had grown colder. The house smelled faintly of river mud, no matter how often I scrubbed the floors. The jasmine garland on the window rotted in a single night, and the marigolds from the old woman at the market withered to brown dust before morning. Still, when Nari looked at me with those dark, endless eyes and whispered, "You promised, forever," I nodded, because I knew, deep down, that promises to the dead are not chains you can break. They are chains that break you. It was Sunday morning, February 25th, 2024, around 9 o'clock. The air was already hot, the kind of heat that settles on your shoulders like a burden. I had not slept well for days. Every night brought the same pattern. Her watching me, the faint cries of a child, the silence that followed. That morning, I walked to the temple. My legs moved without asking my permission, as if some hidden part of me had decided enough was enough. The temple bell rang across the village, clear and deep, and the sound wrapped around my bones. The saffron-robed monks sat in a line on the wooden platform, bowls in front of them, their chants rolling like waves across the courtyard. I stood at the edge, feeling like an intruder. I was a foreigner in every way and language, in faith, in the very laws of life and death. An elderly monk noticed me. His face was furrowed like old paper, his eyes sharp but not unkind. He rose slowly and approached. "You come with heavy heart," he said in careful English. His voice was calm, but it seemed to know too much. I nodded, unable to shape words. He gestured for me to sit beneath the Bodhi tree. Its broad leaves whispered in the faint breeze. He lowered himself beside me, and for a moment we sat in silence. The chanting in the background, like a tide we could both lean against. Finally, he spoke. "Your wife, she is gone." The words hit like a hammer. Though I had known them all along, "I saw her," I whispered. "She came back. She is with me." The monk's eyes softened, but his lips pressed thin. Yes, sometimes love does not let go. Sometimes spirit holds too strong. "Do you know Mae Nak?" I shook my head. He folded his hands in his lap. "Long ago, in Phra Khanong, there was a woman named Nak. She died in childbirth, but her spirit could not leave. She loved her husband too much. She stayed. She cooked for him, slept beside him, cared for him. But she was no longer flesh, only ghost." He paused, his gaze steady on mine. "When neighbors tried to warn the husband, she killed them. When monks came to bless the house, she frightened them away. At last, she was bound by relics of Buddha and sealed in the temple. But the story," he shook his head, "the story never ends. It repeats." My throat was dry. "You mean Nari?" "She is not Nari anymore," the monk said gently. "She is spirit. She loves you still, but her love is hunger now. If you stay, she will take your life, slowly, until you are with her in death." I shook my head violently. "No, she is gentle. She would never hurt me." He placed a hand on my arm, light as a feather, yet it anchored me like stone. "Love and harm are same when spirit does not belong here. You must let her go. If you do not, she will not let you go. A chill spread through me, though the sun burned above. My thoughts spiraled her cold hands, her watching eyes, the baby's cry in the floorboards. The marigolds withered, the garlands rotted, the air that never warmed around her. The monk reached into the fold of his robe and drew out a small amulet, bronze, worn smooth with years of touch. He pressed it into my palm. Keep this. It will protect you when time comes. But you must choose. Stay with her or live. I closed my fist around the amulet. It felt heavier than metal should. When I returned home, Nari was sitting on the porch, waiting. She rose as I approached, her smile bright, her eyes endless. She reached for my hand. You went to the temple, she said softly. My heart stuttered. How did you know? Her smile widened. Though it did not reach her eyes, I always know where you go. Her hand closed around mine, cold, firm, unyielding. And in that moment, I understood the monk's warning was not a story. It was already happening. It was Thursday night, February 29th, 2024. Just past 11:30. The air was unusually still, as if even the cicadas were holding their breath. I had spent the day turning the monk's words over and over in my head until they burned like coals. His warning, the weight of the amulet in my pocket, the memory of Nari's cold hand, everything screamed at me that I could not stay. So I packed, quietly. I placed only a few things in a small canvas bag: my passport, some money, the amulet, and the wedding photo. I told myself I would leave for Bangkok before dawn, that I would catch a flight back to the United States, that somehow I could outpace death on an airplane. The floor creaked beneath my weight as I moved toward the door. And then her voice came, soft but sharp as a knife. Where are you going? I froze. She stood in the doorway of the bedroom, hair falling loose around her face, the white dress clinging to her, as if soaked, though the air was dry. Her eyes glistened, catching the candlelight in ways that made them too deep, too dark. I forced a smile that shook. I was just getting some air. Her smile was small and strange. You promised you would never leave me. I swallowed hard. I am not leaving. She stepped closer, and the temperature of the room dropped. My breath fogged in the warm night air. You are lying, she said softly, almost sadly. You want to run? I backed toward the door, fumbling for the amulet in my pocket. Her gaze followed my hand. Her lips curled. You went to the monk, she whispered. He filled your head with stories. A sound cut through the silence, then thin, high-pitched, unmistakable. A baby's cry. It echoed from the far corner of the room, then from the ceiling, then from beneath the floor. The wail rose and fell, filling every corner of the house until my ears rang. My vision swam. Nari, please. She stepped fully into the room. For the first time, I saw her as she truly was. Her skin was gray, stretched too tightly over her cheekbones. Her lips were tinged with blue. Her belly bloated, split with dark veins, looked as if it still carried the child that had never drawn breath. Her eyes, once warm, were now two black pits that reflected only hunger. You said forever. She hissed. Do you know what forever means? I stumbled back. clutching the amulet, holding it out as if it were a weapon. She stopped, her face twisted with fury. The baby's cries grew louder, rattling the walls, shaking dust from the rafters. "You cannot leave me," she screamed, voice splitting into layers, hers and something deeper. Older, inhuman. I bolted for the door. My legs barely obeyed me, but fear carried me forward. Behind me, the house groaned as if splitting apart. I heard her footsteps. No, not footsteps, but the wet dragging of something that should not move. I ran into the night, the bag banging against my hip, the amulet burning in my palm. The path to the temple glimmered faintly in the moonlight, but every shadow seemed to reach for me. Branches clawed at my clothes. My lungs burned. Behind me, her voice rose, shrill and furious. "You cannot escape. You are mine, forever." The wail of the unseen child echoed after her words, carried on the wind like a curse. When I finally saw the golden spire of the temple, lit by a single lantern, I thought I might collapse. My knees gave way on the steps, but strong hands caught me, monks pulling me inside as her scream split the night. And then, for the first time since she had returned, she did not follow. Not yet. It was Friday, March 1st, 2024, just after midnight. I stumbled through the temple gates with the monks supporting me by each arm. My chest heaved, my vision blurred, but the amulet in my fist burned like a coal, anchoring me to life. Inside the main hall, candles flickered along the walls, their light trembling on ancient murals of demons, spirits, and the Buddha subduing them. The air was thick with incense, sharp and sweet, carrying a weight that pressed against my skull. The head monk, the same elderly man who had warned me, stepped forward. He looked into my eyes and nodded once, as if to say, "It has begun." Behind me, the night split open. Her voice rose from beyond the gates, cold and furious, carried on the wind like the howl of a storm. "You cannot hide from me." The baby's cry followed, thin and piercing, echoing off the temple walls, though no child was there. The monks began to chant, their voices low, steady, rolling together into a tide. The sound filled the hall, vibrating in my bones. The candles bent toward the door, as if something immense pressed against them. And then she came. Nari stepped into the temple courtyard, her form half shadow, half flesh. Her hair whipped in a wind that did not touch the trees. Her belly swelled grotesquely, veins black against her skin. Her eyes were pools of endless night. Her smile stretched too wide. She reached for me, though the monks blocked her path. "Come home," she whispered, voice dripping with both love and rot. "You promised." The head monk raised his hand, and the chanting grew louder. He sprinkled holy water across the threshold. It hissed when it struck the ground, smoke rising as if touching fire. Nari shrieked, the sound splitting the air, rattling the temple doors. For a moment, her face softened, her eyes almost human again, filled with sorrow. "Do not leave me," she pleaded. "Please, stay." My heart cracked. I took a step forward, tears burning my eyes. This was my wife, the woman who had held my hand on quiet nights, who had sung lullabies I could not understand, but felt in my bones. But the monk's voice cut through my grief. "She is no longer yours. If you love her, let her go." The chanting surged, drowning my thoughts. The monks circled, striking gongs, the sound vibrating like thunder. Holy threads were cast in a circle, closing around her. The air thickened, pressing down on my shoulders, making me gasp. Nari screamed again, but her voice cracked, splintering into silence. Her body flickered one moment flesh, the next shadow, the next nothing but a smear of smoke. She clawed at the air, reaching for me, her mouth forming my name. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost doubted it, she whispered, "I will wait for you." On the other side, the circle tightened. With a final, shuddering wail, she collapsed into ash. The baby's cry ended mid-breath. Silence slammed into the temple like a door closing. I fell to my knees. My chest heaved. My vision swam, and the amulet cooled in my palm. The monk placed a hand on my shoulder. His face was grave, but his eyes were kind. "It is finished. But remember, love like that never dies. It waits, always waits." It has been months since that night. I left the village. I left Thailand. I tried to leave the memory. But some nights, when the wind is still and the world is quiet, I swear I hear her voice calling from beyond the walls. Gentle, patient, waiting. And in the darkness, I find myself whispering back, "I am coming."